Good evening. Item number 9, League of Women Voters wants to conduct a candidate forum. The League, whose stated mission is to encourage informed, active participation of citizens in government, nonpartisan, they portend, never support or oppose any party or candidate. They do have an advocacy arm, however, that does take positions, but that's for another time. I recall the most recent candidates forum that was held right here in this room, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, and I can say it was less than stellar. Things that transpired here appeared very odd. Several of the candidates appeared as though they knew in advance the questions that were to be asked. 2 of the candidates were actually sharing notes off the same paper, the same notebook. One candidate was passed over when he should have been given time for a follow-up answer. And even though many in the audience submitted questions, good questions, they never saw the light of day. And then abruptly the forum was cut short, called to a halt, when it appeared that a favored candidate was doing especially poorly. At the end of the evening, 2 candidates were even discussing their forward strategy. Where do we go from here? Call me at the office in the morning. Now, all that was just a few short months ago, but let's move ahead to your Charter Review Committee. Your appointee, Mrs. Christopher Carson, the President, League of Women Voters, Glendale Burbank Chapter, a self-described expert on local forums and elections, in March, when discussing elections in a charter review setting, this is what she had to say. Listen carefully as she describes election processes. Roll the tape, please.
Our election systems are not perfect. They're getting better. There has always been a vast capacity for mischief. Their elections have always been rigged. It's getting, in some ways, easier, in some ways, harder. But the bastion that has developed over is that when there have been professionals who have had both training and experience in running solid, honest elections, not just going through the motions, but knowing how to go the extra mile or the extra 10 miles to do voter outreach and but the bottom line, to run an election that is honest and open.
You heard her. President of our Glendale Burbank League of Women Voters, the expert, one of those involved in our candidates' forums. Always a vast capacity for mischief. Elections have always been rigged. The bottom line, she says, is to run an election that is honest and open. To that end, we must look to the future. What can we do? What can you, the council, do to account for a process that is not rigged, a process without mischief? Can we ensure that questions come from those in attendance without coaching the candidates in advance? Can we allow the people to ask the questions rather than the current cumbersome structure that serves to diminish the League's own stated goals of active participation of the citizens? A town hall format would be good, a New England-style meeting that would be worth attending, a forum with some spontaneity, real give and take, debate back and forth, not so many canned statements, but rather pertinent questions, real issues. Questions from the public are rarely out of line. A moderator could determine on the spot, and if there was not enough questions from the audience, the moderator could insert some previously prepared questions. You have both the privilege and the responsibility to give direction. If you're going to grant privilege to this one organization, please lay down some responsible ground rules. If they object, let's get someone in here who's willing to moderate a town hall meeting.
Thank you.
Burbank voters and taxpayers deserve more.
Next speaker is Mark Barton.
Thank you. I know the issue of the League of Women Voters Forum is on our agenda, and we'll be able to speak about them, but I just wanted to comment on Mrs. Prowser's presentation regarding Ms. Carson, who's a member of our Charter Review Commission. And I think it's unfortunate when people take what people say during a deliberation like that out of context. And in that particular instance, Ms. Carson was talking about the pros and cons of whether you have an elected city clerk or not. And I think when she referred to the fact that there are problems with elections, she's absolutely right. But she wasn't particularly referring to Burbank. All you have to do is pick up the paper and look at what's happened in nearby city, Vernon. who's had an election in limbo for quite some time. I think they have an elected city clerk, but the point was she was discussing the pros and cons of having an elected city clerk versus having an appointed city clerk that has certain qualifications and things like that, which I think is fine, but people should be free to have those discussions and not have them taken out of context and I guess portrayed somehow in her role as the League of Women Voters, which I think her comments were absolutely appropriate for that setting and for that discussion they were having. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Glonsky.
I dashed back down here because I thought my presentation was clear. But I thought I better come back down and explain what I said before the evening gets away from us. When I talked about the League of Women Voters, number one, I established the mission of the League of Women Voters. Number two, I told of my experience at a recent candidate forum. Number three, I established the credibility of Chris Carson. Number four, I reminded you of your personal knowledge of her, for after all, you chose her for the Charter Review Committee. And then I proceeded to use an entire minute to show the entire clip of her comment discussing elections. There was no editing of her comment, and I quoted her. The bottom line is to run an election that is open and honest. And then I tied it to the future, asking the question, what can the council do to ascertain that we have no mischief? Where do we go from here? I reminded you of your position of responsibility, but I also reminded you of your opportunity to improve on what has happened in the past. I'm sorry that from time to time it seems, Mr. Golonsky, that you think you've got the great Carsoni, is it, that can get up here and tell people what they're thinking when they show a clip or when they speak. But unless you're in their head, you don't know. And I did tell you, and there is the outline in reverse of what I did when I tried to come up here to explain that you are in a very unique position. You are the only ones who are in that position, and that is that you can assure that there is not room for mischief and that there is not room for wrongdoing. And then I went on to remind you, please don't leave room for that, because the voters and taxpayers of Burbank deserve better. I hope that you understand it now. If not, I'll come back and try again, and we'll go back to English 101.
Thank you, Ms. Rose Prowser. I think you're looking for the great Karnak.
Thank you.
All right. Any comments? Seeing that none, thank you so much. Have a good night.